Addie Soldiers. It's a cozy rainy day outside, so what a better way to spend it indoors than drinking tea and yelling about books. Oh, that's hot. May was unintentionally a busy month, and so I didn't have enough time to film a video last week, and so usually I would have more than one video in between my wrap-ups, but next week is the first week of June, and that's Pride Month, and so I have been busy, and I want my first video of the month to be Pride related, so you're getting another wrap-up today. Don't worry, darling, I'm making it special for you, because hot damn, did I read a phenomenal stack of books in May. We have charming love interests, delightful dragons, and girls with swords abound. We got big name authors, emotional trauma, and a book that I never thought that I would read. So without further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and buckle in. Join me as we go over the... 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, 10 books I read in May. How did that happen? Oh my god, I didn't have my Pride flag up this whole time. I took it off of my shelf the other day to use for filming purposes. I didn't put it back up, excuse me. There we go. Oh my god, how embarrassing. First up, you'll have seen if you watched my Indie Bookstore Day haul, linked up there, was a new contemporary fiction from a tried and true author that I knew was gonna give me happy feelings, and that was Funny Story by Emily Henry. This is the story of Daphne and Miles, both of whose ex-fiancés were childhood friends and decided that at the last minute they were gonna get married instead of marrying them. So the two of them strike up a bargain to pretend to date online to make them jealous, but then end up falling in love. It was an Emily Henry book. It was sweet, it was fun, chemistry is off the charts. I love the family and the sisterhood dynamics, while also balancing some surprisingly deep subplots on finding yourself after being a part of a relationship for so long and codependency, but also growing up with a narcissistic parent. Daphne is a children's librarian, and I love how much she loves her library and her little patrons. However, I think the way that she is shown and told as a character are on opposite sides of the spectrum, because we're told that she is this awkward, distant person to the point that like everybody at her work thinks that she's in witness protection, but then on page, she's like automatically funny and charismatic and has great chemistry with Miles right off the bat. And Miles is a tall, dark, and handsome young man who loves farmers markets and has mommy issues, who is probably skinny enough that I could snap him in half. So obviously, I love him. His understanding of his past relationship and also of his upbringing with very distant parents and the narcissistic abuse that he went through by the hands of his mom actually is very well explored and explained in this, and I really liked watching him come to those conclusions. And I have a feeling that Emily Henry wrote this for the book lovers in mind, because grand sweeping public gestures of love don't really do it for me. But showing up to help at the 24-hour library readathon does. My qualm with Emily Henry is that she is billed as like the beach read master. Ooh, she writes these cute, spicy rom-coms, and they're these beautiful, bright colored covers, and so you go into it being like, I'm just gonna have a little fluffy, fun read, and then it's like, bam, generational trauma, and you're like, oh my god. Also, the amount of free food and wine that these people get on the house at this restaurant is literally insane. Is this book fantasy? Because in this economy, that damn well feels like it. The second rom-com that I read this month is yet another one that I picked up on Indie Bookstore Day. I found a copy of All the Feels by Olivia Dade, which is the sequel/companion novel to Spoiler Alert, which is a series about actors falling in love with, I don't know, regular people that all center the movie industry, fan fiction, online fan forums, and new types of media. Alex is a heartthrob actor on the TV series God of the Gates, which is kind of like a Greek retelling drama series. He's known for being a playboy and a little bit rebellious, but when a bar fight gone wrong puts him in the tabloids, his producer hires somebody to act as his minder, and that is Lauren, a therapist assigned to keep Alex in line for the remainder of the series. But of course, as they spend more time together and the show is wrapping up and they're thinking of their futures, maybe we fall in love. It's funny, it's charming, it's a really good slow burn, antagonists to friends to lovers. This is a slow burn, but at the same time there's so much else going on that it doesn't feel drawn out or boring. It talks about industry pressure and professional burnout and working on yourself in therapy and being the child of a survivor of domestic abuse. Our leading man has ADHD and it has great rep for that. My ultimate favorite thing about this book is that in this series there's this ongoing joke about how Cupid, Alex's character, is a bottom. There is literally somebody jeopardizing their career to write fan fiction about Cupid getting pegged. But my least favorite thing, the whole point of this series is to talk about how curvy fat women are bagging these super sexy, ultra macho love interests, and like we love that. Our main character is plus size, and they reference her as fat so much. Why did you say it, and I'm not joking, 6 times in 5 pages? Like, oh my god, we get it. So that gripe aside, I actually enjoyed this more than spoiler alert. I can't wait to read the 3rd one. And, I mean, all of us can only hope to one day also be a master of the crone arts. Why do you think I decorate my shelf with so many skulls, huh? I'm practicing. Oh, I'm recounting these. This is only 9, not 10 books. I'm gay, I can't do math. Number 3 is a book that I never thought that I would read, and if you saw one of my last videos on cleaning out my TBR pile, I had mentioned how it's been on my shelf for so damn long, and I wasn't sure if I was ever gonna read it, so I put it in a little, like, probationary pile. And I'm so glad that I picked this book up. One of my new favorite sci-fis is August Kitco and the Mechas from Space by Alex White. Pacific Rim meets Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy meets Iron Widow, but bleaker and gayer. The year is 2657, and there's been a giant army of AI mechs that have been devastating the galaxy, and Earth knows that it's next. Our main character Gus is a jazz pianist who's just enjoying his final hours of being alive when a traitor vanguard comes to Earth and recruits him to be a part of this small group of traitor vanguards that are helping to save the planets instead. And getting roped into this is the galaxy's hottest rock star, Ardent Violet, who was flirting with Gus at the time that he was abducted and decides to go after him, but then also gets taken into this whole conspiracy to save the galaxy. It somehow manages to capture that silly, goofy mood while also having just beautiful prose. There's high tensions and thrilling starship battles and mech bots galore, along with themes of like what makes humanity beautiful and worth saving, and then stuff like bodily autonomy and reflecting on your own humanity. Also an interesting take on piloting mechs, because the mechs themselves are somewhat sentient. There's this kind of mind-melding biotech thing going on that also uses music frequencies to help communicate between pilots, and I really, really love these characters. They're impulsive and agitated, and they don't know what they're doing, and they're just trying to do their best at the end of the world. They feel so real. Gus is so determined and selfless, and yet so full of love, and he doesn't want to be a hero, but he's just trying to do what is right. And Ardent is bold and impulsive and fiercely loyal and won't do anything half-assed or underdressed. The romance is sweet and silly and sexy, but also like the way that they take care of each other. And don't worry, in the last days of humanity, there are 3 things still guaranteed. And that is company newsletters, charcuterie boards, and university-branded sweatshirts. If this book has no fans, I am dead. I cannot believe I sat on this for so long, and now I must yell throughout the galaxy so that everybody will read this as my penance. Now, unfortunately, this next novella is what I would consider the supreme definition of the word mid. Unfortunately, I did not like The Fireborn Blade by Charlotte Bond with this holly black ass-looking font, and this ruby rose ass-looking model, and this huge-ass white dragon. It's giving gay Lord of the Rings, and that's kind of what I was sold on this as. Our main character is this bounty hunting knight, and she wants to go and slay this dragon to reclaim a sword of old, and she has a who's the kid that like follows knights around? Squire. She has a squire, and the squire is acting super sus, and then also it's sapphic because we have a little dalliance with like a girl in town, and I was like, ooh, girls with swords, dragons, suspicious caves with magic in them. I don't know, that sounds great. But it was kind of boring. Like, it was really nothing special. The twist was just kind of here and gone, and it wrapped up really, really fast, and it's not even that long. I'll give them that the lore around the dragon layers and the accounts from knights who had slain dragons, little interspersed chapters in here, were so cool, and I wish we could have gotten way more of that. I also wish we got more time with the White Lady, who is this dragon. She's just kind of built up as this amazing creature, and then she's just gone. And we slay her and we're moving on. And it was like, wait, what? And all of our side characters, and maybe even our main character, were very one-dimensional. Like, they all had one personality trait. And I was like, I know you're writing a novella, but like, you couldn't give me a little something something? I was gifted a copy of this for free from Raincoast Books. So if I were to give the nice media description of this, I would say that it is a quick, cool dip into fantasy with a lady knight if you want to start reading some queer fantasy or you want to get into dragons. If I'm being uncharitable, this is a book that has a cover cooler than the actual plot that reads like a 10th grader wrote it in a single creative writing class. Disappointed! But this next book did not disappoint, and in fact made me reevaluate my life choices, because it's been said before, by me and others that I don't like reading sequels. And I made myself read this sequel this month. And now I'm like, is this what I'm missing out on? Like, have I just been wandering around the world not in having this joy and emotional turmoil? I have got to reorganize my priorities, because Sunbringer, the sequel to Godkiller by Hannah Canner, was a freaking S-tier, top-tier banger. Godkiller is a story that takes place in the aftermath of a war between gods and men, and Godkiller assassin Kissin, and she is on her own journey when she finds a god that she cannot kill, and it is attached to a young noblewoman whose house has just been burned. And so the two of them end up going to the final stronghold city of gods, along with a ex-soldier who used to work for the current king. And of course, the conspiracies amongst the gods themselves and the talks between the human kingdoms are ramping up for a second war, and Sunbringer fully dives into the consequences of the first book, and it does it in such a heart-pounding way. First of all, I love these main characters. There's a fantastic representation for people with prosthetics, with PTSD, anxiety, autism. One character is deaf, one character uses sign language, one character's in a wheelchair. This turned more political than I expected it to, in the best way, because now we have what happens when you force a population to give up the gods of old and become monotheistic, how religion is shared and how gods and their ways of worship are changed or adapted by others. Now, gods are not made from blood and flesh, they are made from belief, but they can still be hurt, they can still die, they can still bleed, and something I love that just itches that little part of my brain that makes me love uncanny weird nature magic is that she says gods cannot bleed themselves, so they bleed the blood that is sacrificed to them. Ooh! And when we last leave our traveling trio, we are all separated. Kissin, she's climbing up a mountain for half of this book. Elagast is reluctantly being made a hero by the city, and he's facing his past relationships and the trauma associated with them. But Inara and Sketty's relationship is what really drew me in, because Inara goes through this whole arc of being on the cusp of adulthood. She's kind of a preteen and like wanting that responsibility and that freedom, but at the same time still being a child. And as a god, Skettiseth is still figuring out his abilities and where he came from and what offerings can do for him, but at the same time being afraid to leave the home that he's made, and that whole internal conflict. This was a phenomenal sequel, and I cannot wait for whatever the third book is, but I do have a bone to pick with this publisher, and that is that if you look at Godkiller and then you look at Sunbringer, what the heck is this? So yeah, 5 stars. I've been humbled, I've been crowed, I need to eat more sequels, I guess. Now for the obligatory singular nonfiction audiobook that I read this month. I did a lot of traveling by bus in May, and so I needed something to keep my mind occupied. And as a big fan of the BCC podcast with Sarah Schauer and Kendall Landreth, I heard that Sarah was reading Between Us, How Cultures Create Emotions by Batya Mesquita, and so I thought, well, if Sarah Schauer's reading it, maybe I should read it too, and then like we could be friends or something. So Sarah, if you're watching this, hit me up. Batya is a Dutch psychologist who asks us to consider if emotions are innate or something that cultures share. By studying emotions from a variety of cultures, including but not limited to North American, Dutch, Egyptian, Nambian, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Inuit, chooses the experiences of others to determine what emotion is, how we share it, and how to look outside ourselves, how our emotional behavior can change, and how emotions can change us. She looks a lot at the I versus we mentality of emotion, how in the West, a lot of it is I feel a certain way, it's more internalized, whereas in a more Eastern society, they look at more we. So how is that emotion being shared between people? What kind of connections are we making? How the West is big on facial behavior. So if they see a picture of someone smiling, they might say that person is feeling happy, whereas in Nambian culture, the example she gave, if they look at a picture of someone smiling, they'll say, that person is smiling. Some cultures feel that if you are suppressing your true feelings, that you're being fake and that you're being rude, whereas other cultures think that if you are suppressing your feelings, that's being polite and considerate for not being over the top. An example she focuses a lot on is shame, how in a Western or North American society, shame is a bad and negative emotion. You were ashamed, because in the West, we prioritize pride as a good emotion. So if you are ashamed, that means that you got your pride hurt. Whereas in a lot of Eastern style cultures, and she particularly uses Chinese and Thai families, I believe, that shame is a good thing because it shows that you have shame. It means that you understand humility and your role in society. Other chapters talk about the hierarchy of emotions, like what emotion is presumed more important in different cultures and who is allowed to have emotions and to what degree, in what circumstance, in front of which people. She talks about her own experience coming to America to teach in South Carolina and how her Dutch upbringing affected her social interactions for a couple of months because she didn't understand the emotions that were supposed to be exchanged. If you're at all interested in psychology, this is a really cool read. I haven't read anything like it. The audiobook's about 8 hours, so it's not outrageous. I don't know, something to think about next time that you're engaging with somebody from a different culture. Made myself a second coffee. If I'm gonna yell more about books today, I'm gonna need it. Also, as I was doing that, the sun came out, so we love that. Lighting change. Next up are two of pair. I read two delightful comedic fantasies this month in the vein of Good Omens and Monty Python and Princess Bride. Writing comedic fantasy is actually way harder than everyone thinks it is, because you can have ridiculousness and tomfoolery, but then you also need to have an actual plot line that's not just like a rubber chicken gag and a miscommunication trope smashed together with a dry glue stick. But these two books did it right. These are Goldilocks books. First up, I was sent by Saga Press, and it tugs on my childhood heartstrings. It's a little Stardust meets Discworld. It's I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons by Peter S. Beagle. Peter S. Beagle of The Last Unicorn fame has once again decided to grace our shelves with a beautiful book that is silly and fun and full of heart. In the backwater kingdom of Belmontaine, dragons come in all shapes and sizes, from tiny little mouse-like vermin to the gigantic mountain-sized kings of old. Our main character, Robert, is a dragon exterminator, a job that he inherited from his now dead father that he actually despises because he has a certain kind of love for dragons. But our story really kicks off when Princess Cerise hires Robert to get rid of all the dragons that have been infesting the castle, as all the princes are coming to ask for her hand in marriage, and she has to pretty the place up. With Robert questioning his career choices, Princess Cerise questioning her role as society, and one very well-meaning himbo prince questioning what it means for him to be in a position of power. All three of them accidentally gallivant into a, say it with me, kingdom-wide conspiracy about dragons, and then this one old wizard who has a grudge. Bumbling yet well-meaning yet very relatable characters all use such good humor that doesn't punch down, and everybody knows that their situation is a little ridiculous and are just leaning into it, and like, that's big theater kid energy. Now that I think about it, they all literally yes-anded their way into a dragon quest. Robert is doing his best to please his family while struggling internally. Cerise is coming into herself and gaining a new appreciation of her autonomy, and Reginald is getting a well-needed reality check. And the dragons of this story are kind of like uber intelligent house cats. They can understand human language, and Robert understands them to a degree, no spoilers, which makes the emotional core of him not wanting to do this job all the much more heart-wrenching and surprisingly deep. I do wish there was a little bit more foreshadowing of the big bad. I feel like we kind of had a fun, silly, lighthearted story until about halfway through, and then it was like, oh right, there's a bad guy, I forgot, sorry. And the ending itself was cool, but it was also very confusing, and I felt like it wrapped up so fast and then very conveniently. However, I feel like that kind of everything wrapped up in a bow, happily ever after type of ending is kind of par for the course for this type of story, because it's like lighthearted comedy fairy tale vibe, so I'm not that mad at it. If you like cozy fantasy, if you want another book with dragons, if you want some straight up good old childhood nostalgia, I would highly recommend this. I had a great time reading this. Second last is the pair to this dynamic duo, which is a book that I was asked to be part of the blog tour for, so you can check me out on Instagram, wherever I decide to put the link. I was sent this by Titan Books, and I had the best time reading this book. It was delightfully entertaining, full of tongue-in-cheek humor, that meta humor, about what it means to really encompass evil, and that was Dreadful by Caitlin Rozakis. Our main character, Gav, wakes up in an evil wizard's workshop with no memory of who he is or how he got there, only to find out that the Dread Lord Gavarax that everyone's talking about is him. He has no idea what his past self has done, or why he's in a castle full of goblins, or why he has a princess locked in his cellar, but he soon finds out that he's part of some kind of evil ritual to summon a demon, and now he has to figure out a way to get himself out of it. Also a surprising reflection on taking hold of your emotions and reflecting on toxic thought patterns, accepting that you've done harm to people and realizing that it'll take more than an apology and a fruit basket to make it up to someone. And because Gav is reinventing himself while also dealing with the consequences of his past past self's actions. He'll get these unconscious thoughts that are violent or prejudiced, and he kind of takes a step back and is like, whoa. Like, at one point he realizes that he's having these horrible thoughts about the princess and is like, hold on a minute. I think I'm a misogynist. We love to see awareness and growth in a man. And hey, if the Dreadlord Gavarax can do it, so can you. And his relationship with the other Dark Lords is hilarious because he's trying to put on that he still remembers what he's been doing. So he's like trying to be suave and dangerous while also like worrying about his goblin staff and like the new relationships that he's made with the townsfolk, being like, don't tell them. Okay, we gotta be cool and strong. Yes, a beheading, just what I love in the mornings. And I also love how this castle is described because he wakes up and then is having to go through his castle with fresh eyes, and he's just like, ugh, is this how I decorated before? Why did I make these candles flicker so much? Like, the ambiance is one thing, but it's so dark in here. Did I always have an affinity for red velvet? God, it's so tacky. The first half of this book is just the main character realizing that he lives inside of a castle decorated by Spirit Halloween. It is dreadfully cute and appallingly heartwarming as we discover friendship and self-worth and realizing that you can always start over again and, you know, finding forgiveness in yourself. Also, what makes a house a home? Right? Like, I would say it's a wine cellar, a feather bed of doom, and a room full of bats. Last one. Now I hear you all saying, Rachel, what is the final book that you read in May? The one that made you feel so incredibly deeply, that also goes into guilt, grief, shame, PTSD, wartime tactics, queer relationships, abusive ex-partners, something that is set in a Jewish folklore-inspired reimagining of 19th century Eastern Europe. Well, friends, I thought you'd never ask. It's The Sins on Their Bones by Laura A. Sabaton. Oh, I can't believe I said all that in one take. That coffee really is kicking in. That's right, folks, this new queer dark fantasy was sent to me by Penguin Random House Canada, and I did a TikTok review on it, and wow, I'm so happy that someone paid me to talk about this because I might not stop talking about it. Dmitri used to be the czar of the country of Novosvitsevo until his estranged ex-husband Alexei started using dark magic that he called holy science to usurp him from the throne. And now Dmitri and what's left of his court are trying to devise a plan to take back the empire as Alexei dives deeper and deeper into madness. All the while, Dmitri and his spy master Vasily are slowly circling each other. There might be a little bit of a romance plot there. While Dmitri is trying to figure out a way to manage his panic attacks and slowly deconstructing and coming to the realization that he was abused in his past relationship. We are meddling in mortal politics and religious fanaticism and unholy horrors alike. The vibes in this are like Nikolai from King of Scars mixed with the Darkling, mixed with Koshke the Deathless, and then also a strange and stubborn endurance thrown in there too. Like, oh, girl, I'm dead. Revive me. Actually, don't. This is a queer normative world, and that's the only thing that's not going to be a source of trauma. This story hurts, and yet it is also so full of love and healing. For the whole first part, Dmitri doesn't believe that he's worthy of love after what Alexei has done to him, and yet this court is just full of such strong people that are like helping give him strength and courage, and it's just so wonderful. And though it is dark, it has great comedic timing, and one of the funniest things that I've read in a book in a long time is that to summon an angel, they do cocaine. Angels like cocaine? Like, what are they doing up there in heaven? It is so funny that instead of lighting a candle and saying a prayer, you go have a bath, you kill someone, and then you get wasted on hard drugs. Now, there was a lot of teased backstory, particularly with our side characters, that I found fell a little flat. Like, I really wish we had dove into that more, and I don't know if that's a first book syndrome, if we're getting a sequel or not. Also, just be warned that there's some just nasty body horror right at the end that was, wow, it was something. Just as your sins are written on your bones, so will you bear the name of God. This is not a fun gay romantasy romp. Like, this book is horrid. It goes into some deep topics that make your chest hurt. It is grotesque and terrible, and I absolutely loved it. Oh my gosh, is that on that? I think it is. Those were the 9 books that I read in the month of May. A fantastic stack this month, if you don't consider the like plus 30 emotional damage that I took. Please leave down below what you read in May or what you plan to read for June, because June is Pride Month, and so we got a whole lot of queer books coming up. Now that the sun has returned, we can do more summertime adventures. I just got myself a new summer dress, and maybe I can wear it like doing a little bookstore haul, or like having a picnic in the park, or like reading down by the wharf or something. Who am I kidding? I don't go outside. Do you ever feel like the world gets a little fuzzy around the edges sometimes when you've had too much caffeine and not enough solid food? Me neither. I probably should go make a real meal before I spontaneously implode. Also, somebody from the internet is coming to pick up a ram skull that I'm selling, and I think they're gonna be here soon, so I should get ready for that. You know where I click to like the video, you know where I click to subscribe. I hope you guys are all having a nice day wherever you are, and I will see you all next week. Bye!